Hey, Sterile Processing Universe, it's Hank Balch here, back again, episode 2 with Matthew Richardson. We're talking about real estate and sterile processing. Matthew, welcome back to the show.
Thank you.
So we went into a little bit of your backstory, how you got started in this space with like $400 in your checking account and some family and friends and a whole lot of hope. And you've learned a lot along the way. And so in this series, we're going to be sharing some of those insights that you've gleaned, not only from your experience, but from all the resources and connections and networks now that you've built out there in the space. So we left off on episode 1, talking about, hey, who can become this thing, right? Like you've become a real estate investor. What kind of person, what kind of qualities and skills are needed to be successful in this space? So let's start there for that question. How would you answer that?
Yeah, so broadly, I'd say almost anyone. And I think some of the few characteristics you're going to need is the number one, as with any industry, is going to be pure grit. There's a lot of learning that goes involved. There's a lot of learning involved in a new industry. There's a lot of connections that need to be made. There's a lot of managing that needs to be done. So you're going to need grit. Two, I think you're going to need a whole lot of self confidence. You almost need a self delusion of yourself and your abilities to get past the stereotypes and the false risks associated with real estate investing. And three, practically, you're going to need to be strong in analysis. If you're not naturally strong, then you need to gear your reading and learning towards analyzing numbers. You don't have to be a mathematician. There's calculators all online that you can use specifically geared towards real estate, but you need to be able to have the ability to conduct market analysis, data analysis, and all of that. Fourthly, I would probably actually add one of the things you need is to be very self-controlled in your emotions. You need to be able to tame those and bridle those up because they'll get you in a lot of trouble.
Yeah, so that's interesting that you wrapped with that addition, because when you mentioned self-confidence, that kind of brings me to an article that I wrote a couple of years ago about sterile processing leadership, and just one of the key components is self-awareness. You
Mm-hmm.
understand, how you're perceived, and you understand also your weaknesses. And so if someone's sitting there and they're like, "Oh man, I was excited about this, but then you said you got to be really self-confident," and I'm like, "No, not self-confident." Does that count me out? Like, how would you overcome that?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, no, I think you're probably exactly right. I think self-awareness tied with self-confidence, right? Because I have the confidence that I can get Y deal done, that I have the appropriate skill set to find the vendors, but I also have the self-awareness to know which deals I shouldn't touch or which ones I shouldn't take on. So I think you're exactly right. I think you need to marry that self-awareness. You need to know where your skill set stops, but then you need to tap into that confidence and say, yeah, just because it stops there, that doesn't mean I can't push it forward, develop it, and become successful in the industry. So yeah, definitely self-awareness is a good addition, actually.
I really like the growth that's kind of assumed in your answers, because it goes back to what we talked about in sterile processing, right? It's not like you ever arrive at this kind of mountaintop of knowledge and then you're done. There's nothing else to learn in sterile processing. You, you're at the top, right? And
Right.
the same thing sounds very similar in this category of there's always things to learn about investing that either is changing in the industry today, or just new things you haven't accessed about different categories or strategies out there. And one of those you mentioned was just that skill set to be able to analyze. And I know,
Mhm.
like, I suck at math. I did a video last week and I'm trying to do math on the go and like multiply things. And like I spit out this number, then someone comments, "That's actually not what that adds up to." And I'm like, "Yes, thank you for double checking me because I stink at math." So uh, if I'm sitting there and kind of like, I know I need to analyze the data and the pricing and the trends, but I know that's a weakness. Like, where would I start in trying to grow in that in a way that's not going to get me into trouble, like you mentioned before?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I'm terrible at math. If I tested on a test, I might test under ninth grade. um, but I know what metrics should be measured, and we have resources to measure those. And so, really, I would advise know what metrics you need to measure, and then you can always find a calculator around it. For example, one thing we talk about in real estate is cash flow, and so you can type in to Google cash flow calculator. Some of the ones I go to is Bigger Pockets. They have every calculator you need for a single family real estate investment, or Deal Check. So there's resources out there where you plug in a few key numbers of a real estate investment deal, and it does all of the analysis for you. It'll give you your projected return on investment, etc. But know your terms. Know what metrics it's referring to when it asks for
Hmm. That's awesome that there's calculators, and that's awesome that if you're aware enough, like we said before, if you're aware that there's value in the analysis, and there's tools out there to help you, then like you said, if you're familiar enough with the categories, and you can
them.
plug, and then I guess those calculators kind of feed it to you in a more consumable format, where you can say,
That's right.
"Is this good? Is it not?" Okay.
That's
Well,
right.
cash flow, I know is going to be a hot topic because that,
Hmm.
cash money, right? Like that's talking about the dollar bills there. So maybe let's start episode 3 talking about cash flow. But I want to wrap this episode up with kind of a high level. All right, folks are 2 episodes into this series. They're learning how you did it. They're learning what they need to know, like the kind of person they need to be, or if they're not that person yet, the kind of person they need to become in order to be successful. Um, what kind of high level thoughts would you give to folks that are like, okay, I think I want to do this? What advice would you give to folks early on now that are considering this path and this journey that we're talking about here?
Yeah, yeah. I would say do it. Start learning now. Tap into some resources online to learn real estate investing. Um, Two, as you're learning those resources, begin talking about it to your friends and family, because something about real estate investors, they often don't like to talk about the fact that they're real estate investors. So as you begin talking about your goals, you'll find people in your community that are already doing it, can aid you along in that process. And then three, begin reverse engineering what you need to do to get your first deal, what you need to do to get your first investment rolling. Find out, start at the end of what it takes, and then begin reverse engineering. What do I need to do to get to that end? I think are the three most important things. Don't think you have to know. I think what I see a lot of people do is they want to begin investing in real estate, and now they want the millionaire real estate investor as a mentor, and that just doesn't work. Find someone 2 steps ahead of you, not 20 steps ahead of you, and they'll be much more willing to talk and guide you along.
Yeah. Yeah. Great insight there. Um, I want to thank everyone who has made it to episode 2 in this series. If you're not hooked yet, you may be hooked on episode 3 when we start talking about cash flow. But Matthew, thanks so much for your time and insight. And anyone that wants to connect with Matthew, check him out on LinkedIn. That's the easiest way, he said, to get in contact with him and ask him some follow-up questions that we haven't covered yet. Or if you want another topic for us to cover in one of these future interviews, please drop him a line and let him know. And as we like to say around here at Beyond Clean, in addition to all your real estate investing, keep fighting dirty.